What is it that you remember of the war?
I was a healer. I was in the hospital ward. So many people I couldn't save. I remember losing. Something didn't work. Harry died. They hung him up off the astronomy tower, and we watched him rot. They hung Ron and his family next to him, and Tonks and Lupin. They tortured them until they died. Then they put me in that cell and left me there.
Hermione was shaking as she spoke. The hospital bed shook and made an angry creaking noise. The healer didn't appear to notice and scribbled more notes.
This is very unusual and interesting. I've never heard of a fugue state like this before. I'm anxious to hear what a specialist thinks.
Glad to be so interesting.
Now, dear, I'm not entirely callous. Look at it from a medical perspective. If there was anything in your past that would be logical for your mind to protect itself from, it would be the aftermath of the war, which you are clearly traumatized by. Instead, what did you subconsciously decide to protect? The identities of your parents and the Order's war strategy. Your magic didn't choose to protect your psyche, it chose to protect everyone else. That is very interesting.
Hermione supposed it was, but it just all felt like too much. Just being able to see again was overwhelming. Being able to speak, being out of her cell. Everything felt like it was too much, too raw, too bright.
Unless the specialist has an objection, you'll stay in the infirmary for a week for recovery before we process you. That will give you time to acclimate to light and sound again, and undergo the therapy you'll need for your torture recovery, and that concussion you got during your checkup. I hope my saying this is unnecessary, but I suppose given your house and history, I should say it nonetheless. You are at a crossroads currently, Miss Granger. What will happen to you next is inevitable, but you have a choice in how unpleasant you force it to be.
With that parting advice, a threat, a warning, Hermione wasn't entirely sure. Hermione glanced around at her surroundings carefully. She was still in Hogwarts. She had been changed out of her prison clothes into a set of hospital pajamas. Pulling up the sleeves, she noted with disappointment that no one had made the mistake of taking off the manacles locked around each wrist. In the light, they simply appeared to be a pair of bracelets around each wrist. They shone like a new penny. They were copper-plated, as she had guessed. In the darkness of her cell, she had spent an untold amount of time trying to ascertain exactly what they were. The simple answer was that they suppressed her magic. How exactly they did so, and how she might get around them while blind and mute had taken much thought. When Hermione finally accepted that it was impossible to fool the cuffs, she began to understand how they worked. She simultaneously hated and appreciated the man who made them. She was sure that they were a conduit for her magic. Each of the bracelets contained a core of dragon heartstring, perhaps even taken from her own wand. The cuffs were specifically set for her. In the cell, whenever Hermione tried to use wandless magic, the magical power slid down her arms and then simply dissolved when it reached the shackles. The copper absorbed the magic. Hermione remembered Binns lecturing on the history of magic about trying to use materials other than wood for wands. Unfortunately, copper was too conductive. It sucked up any flash of magic it detected, whether it was intended or not. Spells would burst from copper wands before the wizard could finish casting them. One touch and they would explode. 2 destroyed wand lamps and the loss of 4 fingers convinced wand makers to use a different material.